Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. An anticlimactic end to the Monza Grand Prix, and Ferrari and the Tifosi are not at all happy at the way it was handled. Bonotto saying the FIA are out of their depth and making bad decisions, but technically were the rules followed as they should have been? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Got to 8,500 yesterday, love to see it. Let's crack straight on. The race began with Fernando Alonso with his 350th race start, unbelievable. Definitely a race to forget for him though after, well, another mechanical problem in that Alpine. The race started in great fashion for Max Verstappen, as it usually does. He was from P7 to P3 within about a lap in fairness, and a couple of laps after that was right behind Leclerc, chasing after the race lead. I thought that maybe starting from P7, it might take him maybe 5-6 laps to try and get into second place, and then he might be a fair few seconds behind Leclerc. As it turned out, no issues at all. Verstappen was right there, and honestly, after the virtual safety car happens, and again, questionable decisions you could argue from Ferrari, it felt to me the race was won for Verstappen within about, 15 laps of this race. Hamilton and Sainz were kind of making slow progress at the back of the field, which ramped up as time progressed, especially for Hamilton. But ends up, Russell doesn't really defend this move into turn one. Makes sense because he knows that, of course, Verstappen wasn't really his race on the day. And then Perez actually has an issue early on, which requires him to box for hard tyres. They make him to the end of the race because, yes, the degradation today was much lower than maybe predicted. But still on the Ferraris, it didn't seem particularly good. So we'll see that here in a second. Now, this is really where things kicked off. So lap 12, Sebastian Vettel, another bad day for Aston Martin, gets some sort of issue, has to pull over after, I believe, the second Lesmo corner. And, therefore, they're thinking, okay, what do we do here? Now, where he was positioned, they could just kind of bring his car back into the cubby, and therefore a virtual safety car was kind of all that was required. Turns out that most of the cars had gone past the pit lane, and then Leclerc thought, well, he's done at this point 13 laps on the soft tyres. They thought, well, can we go to mediums and go to the ends, saving a few seconds on the pit stop and then try and make it work? I'm not convinced this was the greatest idea, to be honest, because lasting 40 laps on the mediums seemed questionable to me. They could have maybe gone straight to the hards, but it seems like Ferrari are scared of the hard tyre nowadays, which is also maybe understandable. So I'm not really sure they needed to do this. Also, they were kind of, hurt by the fact that the green flag came out again when Leclerc was halfway down the pit straight, so he didn't gain as much time from pitting under the virtual safety car as you would usually, because the cars on track are going slower, so you lose less time. But, Verstappen ends up taking P1 and actually ends up extending his stint on the softs to about 23, 24 laps. And that was the issue, really, I think, with what Ferrari were doing, is that at this point in the race, they weren't necessarily so sure what the degradation was going to be. If Leclerc would have gone a fair bit longer on those softs, and it turns out the deg was pretty low in general today, then, maybe he has a similar strategy for Verstappen. He can perform at undercuts, maintain the lead, and try and hold on for the race. I think that Max would probably have won this race regardless, but I do think that from this point onwards, it was like there's no way Ferrari are lasting 40 laps on those mediums. They would have to pit again. They did pit again, of course, but the race at that point was practically lost because it was not the best strategy on the day. Lewis Hamilton was struggling his way through the field. It was kind of funny. He did a classic Hamilton, said the tyres are terrible. A few laps later said, yeah, tyres are still pretty good. So it did seem like that for many drivers. Early on, the tyres didn't seem great. Degradation was hitting them, but then after a few laps, the tyres pretty much maintained their level for, 10, 15 laps. Verstappen, obviously, and Red Bull again nailed their strategy, soft to medium. That seemed to be the way to go on the day, especially if you were out in front, to get that early advantage off the line. So Leclerc at this point, having already pitted, was way back. It was still Verstappen, Russell trying to do the best they could on those soft tyres, which seemed to work out rather well for them. Eventually, Verstappen pits on lap 26. He made it half the race on the soft tyres from the start, and then was only 10 seconds behind Leclerc. So Leclerc had gained some time on the newer rubber, but inevitably was going to lose all that time back, right? And within about 10 laps from this point in the race, he was already about 6 seconds behind Leclerc, and it was pretty obvious for Ferrari that they were not going to win this race on their strategy going to the ends. The only way to try it was to pit again, bring Leclerc in for another set of tyres, and then just try and hope that he can close the gap. But the thing is, that put him 20 seconds behind Verstappen. The two-stop was certainly not the way to go. So I think that if they really wanted a chance here, they should have probably, not pitted him under the first VSC. But, it wasn't a terrible day for the Ferrari strategy crew, but again, not an ideal one. There was no chance he was getting 20 seconds back, and he was gaining, what did he gain over the next 15 laps or so? Maybe, 2-3 seconds or something on Verstappen. It wasn't great. This, though, is where things got interesting. So Daniel Ricciardo's car, tough day for him. He actually had a good start because Norris could barely get the thing off the line. Norris actually recovered incredibly well, but Ricciardo had a difficult day. Ends up his engine just stops working after the first Lesmo corner. He has to pull over to the right hand side of the track. In fairness, this is way off the racing line, so you're never really going to get any drivers actually crashing into the back of him here, but still, it's not ideal. They have to bring the crane onto the track, and therefore they say, okay, look, we've got to do a safety car here, because a virtual safety car doesn't really cut it, because like where Vettel was, a virtual safety car was okay, because they don't need that the track to be clear in that sense, right? A virtual safety car, the cars just go slower, but no part of the track is necessarily clear. The safety car bunches everyone up, and therefore they would have time to remove it. The problem was, I think, from their perspective, is that they didn't pick up the right car. I was sitting there thinking, hang on a second here, the safety car's been out, at least that it said there's a safety car coming for like 2 or 3 laps. Where actually is this safety car? And when it does finally arrive, it doesn't pick up the leader in Max Verstappen, it picks up George Russell. Russell then has to go, like, lap all the way around again to try and catch it up again, and by the time that all happens, there was effectively too little time left in the race. Again, the Monza curse in the last couple of years manages to hit Daniel Ricciardo, so, you know, unfortunate day once again for him. But yeah, this is the key question, right? Eventually the race finishes under a safety car. Hamilton benefits in some way because they pitted Perez to try and you know, give him fresher rubber, but it ends up that actually benefits Hamilton this time because he held on to P5. If they'd have gone racing for 1 or 2 laps, then maybe Hamilton gets overtaken by the guys with fresher soft tires right behind him. But yeah, this is the big question really. Either they made a mistake with how they actually executed the safety car. Could they have had enough time to get the race going again? But the problem was, with Russell where he was and all the other lapped cars still having to go through, there was just no time to get everyone in the right place again to actually restart the race, and it had taken them a few laps to do that anyway. So the question is, really, did they do the right thing here? Because of course, like, it's in Monza, it's in front of the Ferrari home crowds, and there was a chance here that you know, Verstappen loses this race, right? Of course, Verstappen would have won the race, no issues with no safety car, but as it turned out, this would have bunched up the field. Everyone in the top 4 pretty much pitted for fresh soft tyres, so there was a race to be had at the end of this race, a shootout for the victory in the last few laps. A series like IndyCar might say, look, let's just red flag the race. Now, look, I don't think in Formula 1 they're meant to red flag for entertainment purposes, right? Like, they're meant to red flag if there's damage to a barrier or something, but honestly, to me, this is the thing that makes the most sense. Red flag the race and just say, okay, look, everyone come into the pits, put whatever tyres you want on, and we're going to do a standing start with 3 laps to go, and that's going to be it. Shootout for the victory. That is, I think, the way these races should be done. Like, I think that, you know, creates great entertainment value. You don't get all these really anticlimactic feelings of the race ending under a safety car. But as the rules as they are currently written, maybe they were executed badly in this case, but the rules were followed, right? It was executed as it should have been intended to be executed. Of course, last season in Abu Dhabi, which of course we'll always go back to, is one of the key talking points here, because last year, obviously, Michael Massey wanted the race to end in racing conditions, right? He didn't want it to end under safety car for, you know, for the championship decider. Therefore, he, you know, broke the rules, bent the rules, whatever you want to say, to allow that to happen. In this case, they said, well, look, we can't do that again, so we've got to follow the rules as they are written, at which point the race finishes under safety car. So many people might say, and I think they'd be right to say, that this is how it should have finished last year at Abu Dhabi, which is not an entertaining way for the races to finish, right? I would have been much happier last year at Abu Dhabi to have it red flagged and restarted. The same here, right? Finishing under safety car is just, it shouldn't happen, right? I think it's just boring and dull, but like, you know, at the end of the day, the rules should have been followed in Abu Dhabi as they were followed here, but it definitely creates an anticlimactic effect. So obviously people aren't happy, right? As Mercedes are like, well, in the race behind the safety car, so, you know, some flashbacks coming through. And this is the thing, Charles Leclerc in the car, of course, after the race, he was like, well, I didn't really know the situation, but Leclerc was driving past with about a lap to go, thinking, well, you know, it's clear now, can we not get going? The issue was that I think they'd probably messed it up a bit, the FIA, in terms of where they sent out the safety car, to which point the drivers weren't aligned. Like, it wasn't, Verstappen was P1, but then behind him was like an Alfa Romeo, and like, it was an absolute mess, the grid behind the safety car. They would have had to redone everything, the whole field, and I think they messed that up. There was maybe a chance there that, you know, they could have potentially sorted it out in time if they got it right, but even having cleared the incident, there wasn't enough time to actually restart the race. So I don't necessarily think the FIA did anything wrong here in terms of their decision making. I just think we've got to think about this going forward, because this is definitely not the way we want these races to end. Even Bonotto went on to say that effectively the FIA was asleep to some degree, or however exactly this is meant to be translated, but the federation has changed a lot this year and they do not seem up to these situations, kind of implying that, like, you know, they don't really think that the FIA is making the best decisions on these, and kind of, well, messing up a lot of these situations. So it's an interesting one. The rules were kind of followed, but maybe they were executed poorly. As Christian Horner says, they should finish under racing conditions. We want there to be enough time to get going. He believes there was enough time to get going if they'd executed it properly. My personal preference, though, would be in these type of situations, call the race off, red flag it, everyone comes into the pits. Of course, there's a question whether under red flag conditions, should you be allowed to change tyres, whatever. Like, I think, you know, slap some new softs on, have a shootout for the end of the race. That's what we want to to see. And yes, Verstappen might have, not won the race, and a race that he was clearly winning if that was the case. But I do think in terms of entertainment value, that's the way that we should start to go in these kind of late safety car situations. So interesting stuff. This is the way the race finishes, though, under safety car conditions. Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Sainz, Hamilton, great drive from Sainz and Hamilton, especially to get up to P4, P5. Perez 6th, Norris, great drive from him, actually, was 7th. He was actually holding pace on the mediums at the end with Hamilton. A fair few retirees down the bottom of the grid here, but De Vries P9. What a fantastic performance, right? I mean, Latifi is well and truly mudded at this point. Like, De Vries comes in with no practice at all, sticks it in the Williams. Great drive to hold off Guanyu and eventually finds himself in P9 with 2 points on the board. So great stuff, and that puts Latifi 21st in the Formula 1 standings out of 20 drivers. So congratulations to Nicholas Latifi for an unprecedented feat. But at the end of the day, this is what the drivers' standings now look like. Remarkable how far Verstappen is ahead. He can actually lock up the Drivers' World Championship victory next weekend. Well, it's not next weekend, it's the next Grand Prix weekends at the end of September the 30th, I believe, in a couple of weeks' time, if he wins the race effectively and Leclerc places in a certain position. I think he also has to hope that Perez finishes low or something, so more than likely he won't become world champion next weekend. It's probably going to be the weekend after, but if he finishes first with the fastest lap, Leclerc's 9th or lower, and Perez finishes 6th or lower, then it's official, it's locked up. Verstappen can not even turn up to the last several races of the season and still win the title. So that's going to do it for this video for today. I'm going to do another video later on, some further reaction to this, because it's definitely an interesting one. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.